Well, thank you guys for coming to our class here today. We're going to teach a leverage to legacy presentation that I teach a couple times a year. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name's Adam Crosley. I'm a regional manager for Crown Home Mortgage, and I'm also our sales coach. But I also invest in real estate. I've been buying real estate for almost 20 years. I'd say about 18 years ago, I bought my first piece of real estate. Um, I kind of my backstory is I actually wanted to become a real estate agent when I was younger and spent some time up in Alaska, did a lot of reading. And it wasn't that I really wanted to become a real estate agent. I wanted to invest in properties. And that's really, I read a lot of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and a lot of books about investing when I was younger. And I was really, really interested in becoming an investor. And I kind of thought at the time, like, what better way to become an investor than to become a real estate agent? So, kind of rewind the clock back to 2008. It was, I don't know, show of hands. Was anybody in the business in 2008? Just me? Am I the only old timer? Okay, well, apparently I am. And for those guys that aren't on with your screens on, if you want to turn your screens on, it'd be awesome to see your faces. If not, I'll just keep talking. But so I at the time I was studying to become a realtor. And I live in a pretty small community, Plattsburgh, New York, upstate New York, about as far as you can go in New York, about an hour south of Montreal, Quebec. And Blair's just using middle school. Now I really feel old, Blair. Thank you. And that's awesome. And that's great. So anyway, in in 2008, as I'm studying to become a realtor, literally like 70% of the community that I was in that were mortgage lenders, they all quit in like a few month period. And so the broker that I was studying underneath, I remember plain as day, we were having lunch one day, and I asked him, I said, Joey, with all of this that's happening, do you think people are going to start paying cash for houses? And he kind of thought about it for a minute. He's like, Adam, I honestly don't think people will ever start to pay cash for houses. I just don't see America ever getting their stuff together where they can afford to pay cash for houses. So then I'm thinking, at the time I'm, 22, 23 years old or whatever it might be. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should pivot here. Maybe I go into mortgage versus going into real estate. And anyway, got into mortgage in 2008 and learned the business. And a few years later, I picked up my first piece of real estate. And I'll kind of go over my whole portfolio here with you guys today, and then we'll talk about that. So that's kind of a little bit of my backstory. Today, I've got about $4.5 million worth of real estate. I'm 40 years old, and I've got a couple paid for properties. I've done very, very well in real estate. I think being a lender or being a realtor, we have a natural inclination to the game, right? And one thing that I like about Warren Buffett, he says, invest in what you know. So my portfolio, my personal net worth is very heavy in real estate because I understand real estate at a very high level. In mortgage over the last 15 years, I've helped about 2,500 families total. So I've seen a lot of situations, I've known a lot of things, but also because of those relationships and those times, I've been able to see and get access to deals before the general population. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but just if anybody could kind of in the chat, like, what do you want to get out of this class here today? Like, how would you know this was a good conversation today if, like, what do you want to learn? How to start. Okay, cool. Well, Kimberly, I'll tell you how I started. That's one thing that we'll go over.
Yeah,
Oh,
Adam, similar in nature. For me, it's, how do you spot a deal, right? And what you're interested in might not be what I'm interested in, right? But for
here.
you, like, what are the indicators that you look for to know that there might be some potential there?
Okay. All right, wonderful. Anybody else want to learn anything, or are we just here to waste time today? Maurice, good to see you, man.
How you doing, Mr. Adam? I want to learn something.
Cool.
So it seemed like so
Okay.
preparation and discipline. What I mean by that, it seemed like you came from '08, subprime mortgage lending when America hit a crisis. What else? 2017, also COVID. So
Hmm.
my question isn't, it's also to back off of what he said. I want to know how to spot a deal, but how to leverage yourself in a position where as though you can go through highs and lows no matter what American do.
Mm, cool. So is it fair to say, well, yeah, highs and lows. I like that.
Yeah, highs and lows because you was able to sustain wealth throughout no matter what was going on with the economy.
Okay, cool. And I'll tell you, Maurice, like, my story is a very get rich slow story.
Okay.
um, and as I think it should be, right? But then, and I was kind of trudging along, doing all right, doing all right, doing all right. And does anybody remember? I mean, I know some of you guys are agents, but when rates went from 2 to 8% in 6 months, does anybody remember that? That wasn't good for me. So at that point, that's when I really took off in real estate because well, here I'm 40 years old now.
Mhm.
Guys, we're all in real estate, right? If you're a lender, if you're an agent, we're in real estate. Real estate seems to get punched in the face every 10 to 15 years, right? I'm 40. I acknowledge and accept that I'm going to get punched in the face at least twice more. I
Mm.
just don't want it to hurt as much the next time.
Yes.
And that's why, Maurice, I leveraged my portfolio. My mortgage business in 21, we grossed 2.2 million. In 22, I grossed 386,000. Like my
Mm.
business crashed. Dude, I had 12 employees. I went to two. It was terrible. Like, different story for a different day, but I've always, drank. I had to quit drinking because I couldn't keep it all together. Like it just wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my family. It wasn't good for anything. But in doing so, I kind of had that realization. I leveraged my retirement, I leveraged everything. And I said, hey, the next time I get punched in the face, I want to have this side business that's pretty passive. So that way, if I need to go to zero in the mortgage business, I can make money from this other bucket so that I can still, so that I can still get paid and keep my team afloat, et cetera.
That's a leverage. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So cool. All right, cool. Well, let me share my screen and we'll get rolling here, guys. Okay, cool. And y'all can see my screen, is that correct?
Yep, we can see
Yeah, we can
Okay,
see
cool.
it.
Awesome, cool. So leverage to
Yes.
legacy is what I call this presentation. Again, and it's kind of how I built my $4.5 million portfolio in 4 years. Now I had started that kind of, Maurice, like we had talked about, but really it took off in the last 4 years. And I'll go through all of that here. But again, Adam Crosley, primarily I am a loan officer. That's what I do. I help about 200 families buy homes every single year. I'm also a real estate investor, and I also love to help other people succeed and hit their goals. I know a few of you guys in this room I've had the opportunity to coach before. So that's just kind of my passion, and I love helping people. So when Mike pulled me aside and said, "Hey, could you teach this class for everybody around the country?" I was honored to do it. So and I'm so apologetic that we had some technical issues last week. So that is all on me. So thank you guys for showing up for round two. But I greatly appreciate y'all. So whenever I teach a class, I always like to start off with a quote. Has anybody ever heard of Andrew Carnegie? Pretty much the richest man ever, right? Back in the 1800s, if you quantify it to today's dollars, richer than Warren Buffett, richer than Elon Musk by any means. And one of my favorite Carnegie quotes is 90% of all millionaires become so through by owning real estate. More money has been made in real estate than any industrial investments combined. The wise young man or the wage earner of today invests his money in real estate. And guys, I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that real estate, I got into the real estate industry so that I could learn how to invest, right? And I highly recommend. So, show of hands, does anybody have any real estate investments? Okay, Mike? Mike's building a great little portfolio as well. Twala, yes? Cool. Awesome. So, a few of you. Guys, you know what I love about real estate? It's real. Let me show you something.
It's a tangible asset.
You know what this is? What is it?
Sure do.
This doesn't mean that much.
It's
This
I was
is
fake.
going to
just a
say,
piece
but
of
it's not
paper.
real.
It's not real.
It's real because I believe in it and each one of you believes in it. I can give this to you and you believe that it's worth that and we can fairly exchange goods. Does anybody else believe that this is losing that trust? Right? Real estate's real. One of the things that I love about real estate is, let's say we have an inflation event again. Let's say that rent goes up to $10,000 for your average apartment. Okay, let's say a loaf of bread is $100. Well, rent's going to be 10,000, and that's going to go up with that, and I'm going to be able to pay my properties off faster because I bought a property at a fixed price and I'm paying it down. But that asset goes up in value because it's a hedge against inflation. It's one of the reasons why I really like real estate. Cool. So tell you a little bit about today we're going to talk about 3 loan strategies. We're going to talk about creative finance. We're going to talk about DSCR loans, and we're going to talk about fix and flip loans. Has anybody ever heard the term DSCR before? Cool. Anybody that hasn't heard that term? So DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. And basically what that means is, does the property pay for itself? If it does, awesome that you can typically invest that. I just did one of those on my investments. Awesome. Cool. Very cool. I do a lot of DSCR. I'm a mortgage lender. I don't want to do a loan for myself. Like I'm a high level mortgage pro, but I own 4 businesses. I've got 40 rentals. I've got 4 kids. Got a lot of 4s in my life, now that I think about it. but I don't want to have to conventionally analyze my tax returns. I'm a pain in the butt. I don't want my processor to have to go through that and get that poking and prodding, right? At the end of the day, I use DSCR because DSCR is so much easier on the acquisition. Is it more expensive? It is. Is it worth it? It is to me. And we'll talk about that more in depth here.
Mr. Adam.
Yes.
Quick question. DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio.
That's right.
Do you use a certain metric with that? Whereas though 85% to 1%?
Yeah. So there's 3 types of DSCRs. Let's just use $1,000 a month for. I mean, I think that's really cheap and simplified, but just for easy math, right?
Okay.
If the mortgage, if the rent is $1,000, there's 3 types. So we actually have one product that'll go down to a 0.75, but you're gonna have a much higher interest rate. So let's say, if the rents are $1,000, or rather the mortgage is $1,000, we have an option that'll do it if the rents are below $1,000, but your rate's going to be very expensive.
Okay.
We have another option at 1-to-1, and that's 1 to 1.2.
Yes.
And that's a normal-ish. It is a little more expensive, but once you cross the 1.2 threshold, so your mortgage is $1,000, the rents are $1,200, the rates come down, and they're not much. They're, depending on the investor in the day, it's typically about a quarter to a point, half a point higher than your typical conventional one. Okay. So there is a cost to doing that, but it's a nominal cost. And honestly, that's typically what I do when I'm looking for a long-term hold is to do that DSCR. If I'm looking for a fix and flip or I'm looking for a value add, and you can, we'll talk about it here when we get into the portfolio a little bit more. But I just bought a property a couple years ago, and it was just below market rent. I was able to qualify it on a 1-1 DSCR, paid a little bit of a higher rate. I literally just refinanced it, closed it this morning. I've closed on that house. It's a 10-unit property I bought for $870. That was below market rents. And I closed on that December of 23. I refinanced it today. I literally closed this morning. It appraised at $1,090,000. So I put about 35 grand into that place. mostly paint, some cosmetics, some LVT flooring. So like, but minimal stuff, but the property had really good bones, good exterior. So that property there, you know, bought for 870, put 35, 40 into it. So I'm into it for, like 905-ish. But that property I've owned for 26 months and it went up $220,000 in value. So I'm 190 grand ahead on that deal. Great deal. Obviously, I'll do that. I'll do that deal any day of the week. All right, cool. So I bought my first property when I was 25, back in 2012. And I used an FHA loan, primary residence. So somebody asked the question, how do you start? Okay. Back then, you could not do a conventional loan on a multifamily. Okay. Now you can, if it's your first property and it's a primary residence, you're going to house hack and live in one of the units. You need 3.5% down FHA or 5% down conventional. And that's a 1 through 4 unit property. I think that is the best way for the average person to start. Just show of hands. Is there anybody here? Is everybody here either an agent or a lender in this room? Is that a fair statement? Is there anybody that's not either an agent or a lender? They're just an investor. Okay. So why I bring that up, guys? Because we all have customers, we all have clients, right? And if you're out there talking to your customer and they want to get into starting a portfolio, a lot of times if you can help them get into a 3 or a 4 unit property and they can leverage FHA 3.5% down or conventional 5% down, it's a great way to build a repeat buyer. Because that person's going to get into that house, stay there for a couple years, build a little bit of equity, and then go buy another property. And you can help them build that portfolio. Okay. So also a good tactic if we're advising other people to help them grow their business. Okay. So I bought my first property. It was a duplex. It was actually a single family house that had, this is a picture of it. And if you look off to the side, this picture's from like 2012, so it's a little dated, right? But if you look off to the side, that was a garage. The previous owner took this single car garage, they extended the back of it and turned it into a mother-in-law suite. It was an ADU when I bought it. It had a door in between it. I bought the property. I came in, I sheetrocked over that door, took the door out, sheetrocked over it. Okay, cool. It's got its own exterior entrance. Town was cool with it. Everything was fine with it. And now it's a duplex. Okay. That property, I lived in the house. I rented out the side. I lived in that property for 1.5 years and just kept going. I took all the excess money from that and this is before this is like back 2012, 13, 14. We weren't far from the 2008 crash. There was not, all of the fun loans disappeared, right? So I went back and then I had to go use a conventional loan to buy a foreclosure property. So that was the Route 22 property. That property I bought for 45 grand. It was good boned house, but there was the front porch had 4 inches of dog crap on it. Like the previous owners like put their dogs out there. It was just sheetrock was smashed. It was a nasty house. But I was young and dumb and had lots of energy and no cash. So I learned how to swing a hammer and I did a lot of work, a lot of my own sweat in that property. So I bought that property for 45 grand. I think at the time I had to come up with like 10 or 12 to do that. All of that cash came from the excess cash from our duplex. We still lived in that property. And then I went through, did that. I probably put about 25 grand into that. And oh, thank you, Mike. There was 2 other people that were sitting in the waiting room. When I turned the chat on, it didn't. I couldn't see the waiting room. If you can just keep an eye on the chat for me, brother, and that. Thank you. So I bought that, put about 15, 20 into it, and then we turned around and sold that property for 120,000. So I made about 50, 60 grand on that flip. Okay. And then I took that flip. I'm in the mortgage business, right? I need a location. I run my own branch. So I bought a Downtown, I live in downtown, I live in Plattsburgh, so I bought a downtown row building. This property had two storefronts, and then it had four apartments up front with a garage out back. Well, it had been on the market for almost 2 years because one of the storefronts, the biggest storefront, was vacant. So the seller couldn't sell it because no investor wanted it because it had this downtown large location, the largest location in the property that wasn't renting it. So again, we've all said that we are all in either mortgage or real estate, correct? I love buying a building and having your business out of a building that you own. Pay rent to yourself is a great tax advantage. Okay. So that's a strategy that I've used twice in my career now. So I love Crown. That's the flag I fly. I've been here for, 4 years now. I love this company, but they also send me a check every single month. It's pretty nice, like, but so I highly recommend that. So that was 64 Bridge, and 64 Bridge was my downtown building, and I owned that for 7 years. Okay. I did a cash out refi on that. And now this, Maurice, kind of getting back to the conversation we were having. So this is what my portfolio looked like in all the real estate that I acquired from 2012 to 2021. This is not very impressive, especially at that speed. Okay. But then what I did is that building on Bridge Street had grown in value. So I bought that building for about $350. It was worth about $550. And I had been there for 7 years, so I had paid that down to about $200. So I did a cash out refi of that building, took that $200, and then I bought a strip mall. Okay. So I took that $200 and I bought this building, a little bit of extra cash that I had. I bought this building for this strip mall for 1.1. Now, this property gets 50,000 cars that go by it a day. This intersection right here is right to the highway, right in the hub of our community. Okay. And the cool thing about this property is, well, it wasn't cool for the seller. It had been on the market for a couple years. He couldn't sell it. There was a 23% of the unit was vacant. It was a huge unit and it had this huge vacancy. Well, most investors don't want to buy something that's got a large vacancy unless they have a tenant. Okay. Now, but think about this. And somebody asked the question about valuation. How much is a commercial property worth?
Lion is awake. This lion is.
How much is a commercial property worth?
It depends on how much it makes.
Correct. So with commercial property, it all comes down to what your NOI is. It's called your net operating income. So what we need to do is find ways to increase that NOI. So I'm buying this property that barely pays for itself and really almost doesn't. But if it had a lease for that unit, then it would. Well, guess what? I also run the mortgage business, right? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the flagship tenant in the property. So I did that. Property appraised, bought it for 1.1 million. It appraised at 1.2 million. I've been in this plaza now since the fall of 21. So this will be the 5th year that I've been in the property. We've put about 50 to 60 grand in the property. It's now worth about 1.6. So we've had a huge jump in appreciation. Now we've had a huge jump in appreciation, not because I've put money into it, but rather because I've renegotiated the leases. Now the leases were all really good as a per square foot, but the owner was responsible for the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, everything else. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've slowly, as those leases have come up, I've put that back on the tenant and left their rent the same. That's called a triple net lease. Has anybody ever heard that term before? So that means the tenant pays for taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Now, because I've put that all back on the seller or on the tenant, it's increased my net operating income because I've removed expenses from that, which with a multiple of 9, that's what the cap rate is in our area, it's made the property worth a lot more. The loans listed, what you use to make them purchase. That's correct, yes. So down here, okay, so I bought the plaza. I used a commercial loan for the plaza. So that was my first acquisition. That was the fall of 21. Then in the spring, and that was like the rate crash happened in the spring of 22. Okay. And I had 250, 300 grand sitting over here in my 401k. I had been diligently saving for over a decade. And I've been maxing out my 401k every single year, and I had a good pile of cash. But again, I kind of came to the realization that, hey, I'm in real estate. I am going to get punched in the face again in real estate, probably at least twice more. Let's soften that blow. I can't control the value of Tesla stock, but I can control the value of 62 Broad Street. Does that make sense? So I went to go find underperforming assets. So Broad Street, and again, that's the 10plex that I literally just refinanced this morning. And actually, I did two. I did Broad Street and Ashley Road. I'll talk to you about Ashley Road here in a minute. But Broad Street is a 10-unit building. We at Crown do have lenders that a lot of lenders will only do DSCR 1 to 4 unit. We have options for 5 to 10 units. So if you're an agent and a Crown LO referred you, go talk to them about that. That's an option that we have. Again, I bought that and they were just below market rents. So I went through as tenants turned, went through, painted each one of the units, put new LVT flooring in, et cetera, just keep going on that. And we were able to increase the value of that property quite a bit in a very short time. Couch Street is another 10-unit building, but this one was a 10-unit college house. So that one actually, because it was Plattsburgh is a college town, I was able to leverage that. I did a DSCR loan on that as well. I'll be honest with you, Couch Street is the blemish in my portfolio. I hate the fact that I own college. I have made no money on this property. On paper, it's a winner. It makes everything. In reality, college kids suck. And that one is a 10-bedroom house that in 3 years, I think I've replaced 22 bedroom doors. They do so much damage to that property that all of the net income is gone on that property. And I am usually at or below that. So I look at that as a long-term equity play. I tried to sell it last year. I'm probably going to end up holding on to that for a very long time just because it is what it is. But again, DSCR 20% down. That one, probably the only reason I bought that one is because I lived in that building when I was in college and I was sentimental to it. Don't buy this is one thing I've learned in my career, in my investing career, is don't buy properties because you're emotionally tied to them. Every time I've bought something because I liked it or whatever, and I didn't look at the math, I got screwed. So that's advice from stubbing my face on the wall before. Reset. Now, Reset was different. And Reset, I did a DSCR, but I did a DSCR with the seller held second. So I got the seller to hold the down payment. The seller gave me the down payment on that deal. And then so I actually bought that deal. I bought 9 apartments and it cost me $3,000 at the closing table. Blair's like, what? Right? Like, so because I jokingly said something to the guy, and this is something that, and this guy's owned that property for 20 some odd years. Bought that portfolio for just shy of $1 million. He didn't have any mortgages on him. He's owned them for a very long time. So I said, hey, Mr. Seller, are you aware of the capital gains tax you're going to have? What's that? His agent never explained to him that he was going to have capital gains tax. So if you're an agent and you're helping people sell homes, make sure you understand that as well. So I said, hey, Mr. Seller, you're going to have about a $300,000 tax bill. And he was shocked. And so he went to meet with his accountant, and his he came back and he's like, yeah, it was like $280, 280,000 is pretty high, right? So I said, could I show you a better way? So what we did there is I said, if you'll hold the note for me, then I'm going to pay you as if you're the lender. And now that money, or a large portion of that money, is coming to you as interest income versus capital gain all at once. So basically what they're doing is they're taking that gain and spreading it over an 8-year period so it doesn't hurt them all at once. And because of that, it dramatically lowers the capital gain that he has. Mike, you have your hand raised.
Yep, I think Rick is in the waiting room. She just had to switch devices.
Oh, thanks, brother.
And I don't know, you might
at
have to make me like a moderator or anything. I don't know if you can do that, and then I can monitor it for you.
It's only giving me the option to make you the full host.
I'll take it.
All right, well, you're the host.
Cool.
Can you guys still see my screen, or did that come off? You can? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So that was that.
You can't see the screen.
What's that, Kimberly?
Yeah, I think you might have to go back to host, Adam. I'm sorry. I thought we'd be able to do it both ways.
Reclaim host. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see my screen again? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. All right, cool. Thanks, Mike. Okay, cool. So Stetson Road. Stetson Road is a passion project of mine. Stetson Road is a house with a bunch of acreage that is next door to my house. It has this old beat up house on it with a really, really large garage. And I'm a big gardener, and it's got this property right next to it. And my wife really wanted it. So that's why we bought it. It wasn't a great investment. It wasn't that, but I will slowly turn that in there. Now that property came up for sale and it was 150 grand. Adam had just bought all these properties. Adam didn't have 150 grand. So I went back to the lender that had the commercial loan on the plaza, but because I renegotiated all those leases, I went back to him and said, hey, I don't really want to go refinance all of my debt with somebody else. But in commercial, the rules are a little bit different. I said, would you give me a second loan? I've got enough equity in it now. And at the time, I bought that property before rates spiked. So my first loan for like 800 grand was at 4%. So I didn't want to go get a bigger loan. At the time, this was when rates were 7%. So I said, could I borrow 150 grand from the plaza, do a cash out refi, and just get that one portion? And so I paid a little bit more for that. So I got that, but then I just took that. My tenants are paying for me to have this toy property. Cool. So that's kind of neat. And it's right next door. My wife and she's in her late 30s. I'm 40. All of our parents in their late 60s, early 70s have found they're all single now at this point of their life. And the realization has come to us that we're probably going to have to change one of their diapers at some point. So it would be really nice if grandma or grandpa was right next door, but also not under our roof. So that's kind of what we see that property as. Or if somebody wants to come visit us, whatever, say Mike wants to come up or anybody wants to come up to Plattsburgh, Rika, if you're up ice climbing or whatever it might be, there you got, you have an Airbnb. And so that's our plan with that property. I've been fixing a lot of my other investments. So probably in the next year or two, I'll fix Stetson Road, but that's how I acquired that. And then Ashley Road is a fix and flip. So I'm pretty much out of cash, and I've been slowly saving, but all of my piles of cash I've leveraged at this point. Okay. So what do we do when we want to buy more real estate, but we don't have any cash? And this is why I love real estate, because real estate is creative. So my solution to that is I'm going to start doing fix and flips. Now I've got 44 units at this point. I have a full-time maintenance guy on staff because I also am a very large mortgage producer. That's my main job. It was just easier for me to hire a full-time maintenance guy, at 20 something an hour, and just, I trust him complicitly. He was a Cub Scout leader with me, and he's just a great dude. So I brought him on the team, and he runs my maintenance department, and it's awesome and it's great. But I've got 44 units. Not everything breaks all at the same time. I also didn't want to get to a spot where I was going to have to lay them off because I didn't have work for them. So my bright idea was two birds, one stone. Let's start to do fix and flips. So this particular property we bought out of foreclosure. We bought it for 150,000, put 35,000 into it. It just appraised at 300,000. So awesome. Now, based upon income, based upon everything else, my accountant, he's like, Adam, if you make an extra 100 grand this year, you're going to pay 40% in tax on everything. So he's like, idea, you already have a lot of rentals. If you rent it for at least a year, then you can 1031 it and not pay any tax. Is anybody familiar with 1031? Okay, so a 1031 defers the tax on an investment, but the property has to be investment property. If you flip a property, it's considered income, earned income. If you flip a property within a year, if you hold it and it goes from rental real estate to rental real estate, it's then now considered investment, and then you can take 100% of that. So I've got about 150 grand in equity in that property that I now need to roll into something else. So my plan is, fast forward, spring of 27, I'll put that property up on the market, and then I'll take that 150 grand and I'll probably buy a 3 or a 4 unit property with those funds. And that'll be the down payment there. And so like right now, I'm cash flowing about 150 bucks a month on $150,000 in equity. That sucks. But simultaneously, I'm not giving the government 40% of 150 grand, right? So, okay, I can skate by for a year. Everything's brand new, everything's good. But I'll tell you, we did really, really nice finishes on that property, and I anally selected a tenant. I didn't want to put a hard tenant that was going to be hard on my property because I didn't want to lose any of that appreciation, any of that equity over the course of that year. So going forward, and so right now I'm looking for my next flip. But the problem was I'm out of cash because now I've got 150 grand tied up with this property that I can't really get out. So I did just do a cash out refi. I've now got some seed money, and I went with my commercial lender, and at that bank, at that small savings and loan, I've got $100,000 line of credit. So now between these two piles, my line of credit and actual cash, I've got about 150 grand I can work with. So I'm now searching for my next fix and flip. And if I don't knock it out of the park like we did on Ashley, I'll probably just sell it right away. But if we do knock it out of the park, I might just continue to do that. Or maybe I'll look for deals where they might take a little bit longer. And I BRRRR this. Is anybody familiar with the BRRRR strategy? Buy, rehab, rent, refi. So that's literally, that wasn't my exit strategy with Ashley Road, but that's what I ended up doing. Okay. So that's kind of my portfolio, how I got to here and everything else. I know we've touched base on a lot of different things. Does anybody have any specific questions on my portfolio? No? Cool.
Yes, I do. I'm
Yes,
sorry
okay.
to make you
No,
go
by all
back,
means. Yeah.
but on Booth Plaza,
Mhm.
the commercial, can you explain? I had a client call me at that time. Can you explain to me how you acquired that? Because that's really what I want to get into next, is trying to purchase some plazas.
Cool. Awesome. So and I'll be honest with you, commercial is my favorite tenant class to deal with. People who have apartments, single rental tenants are hard. They're hard to deal with. They're needy. They have lots of questions. They have lots of problems. They can never pay the rent on time, right? All of my rental problems they come mostly from college, but notwithstanding that, the second worst is apartment rentals. Commercial rentals, I love commercial rentals. I literally just signed a 10-year lease last year, like with a 3% increase year over year. I love commercial. However, commercial is harder to get into. What I found with this particular property, there was a large vacancy that I ended up taking over. And it was having a hard time selling because of that vacancy. So anytime I buy a property, whether it's a rental, whether it's a single family, I'm always looking for value add opportunity. Or like with a reset portfolio, like that property with that the 100% financing I got, I'm making no money on that. But he's about $500 below average market rent on every single tenant. So I'm not kicking people out. I'm not that kind of landlord. I'm not a slumlord. I'm not doing any of that. But as they naturally turn, I'm now that I've owned that property for over a year, we're doing a 5% increase. That's the max allowed in New York State. So we're doing a 5% rental increase. And if somebody moves out, then we're going in, we're spending 10 grand a door, completely redoing everything. And then we're bringing it up to market rent around $1,500 a month.
Okay.
And then fast forward, I've got 8 years till that balloons out with him. So sometime in the next 8 years, I'll have created a lot of extra value with that. I'll do a refi and I'll pay off his second note on that. But yeah, so that's it, Twala, is you have to go in and just find value add opportunities. And every commercial lender is going to be different, but typically you're going to need to put 20-25% down. My down payment on that one came from a cash out refinance of my other commercial property. So again, different strategies that I've personally used. I've used creative finance. Creative finance is one of my favorite things to do. However, it's much easier to do when you get into commercial loans or DSCR loans. If you're doing any Fannie loans, if you're doing FHA loans, different things like that, having a second note held by the seller, it gets very, very difficult in underwriting. And it's very hard to align up. DSCR, because they're considered non-QM, non-qualified mortgages, you can have seller held seconds. But it all depends on the investor and different things. So work with whomever your Crown rep that sent this to you, and they'll walk you through all that. And then fix and flips. We'll go into more details on fix and flips here as well. But basics of DSCR loans, again, debt service coverage ratio loans, they don't look at your personal income. Kind of as I stated before, I've got a lot of income coming in from a lot of different sources, but I have a really thick tax return. I have a schedule. I have a farm business. I've got a couple other businesses. I do some coaching. I do some consulting. I have a snowplow landscape business, and then my main business is my mortgage business. Right. So I've got income coming in from everywhere, but a conventional underwriter would have a field day with my tax returns, right? So for me, I like DSCR because they don't look at Adam. They look at, does 123 Main Street stand on its own? Does 123 Main Street pay for does it pay for itself? Kimberly said, what's your favorite way of finding a deal? Honestly, Kimberly, my favorite way of finding a deal is in the mortgage business, I have a lot of real estate partners. I have a lot of real estate friends. My phone probably rings once a week. I wish I could bird dog deals for other people because my phone, some of my agent partners call and say, Adam, you bought a lot of real estate. You want to buy some more? What agent wants to sell a house, before it even hits the market, right? Any agents in here that would love to sell a house before it even gets on the MLS, right? That's what we do. So what do you guys do? You call everybody that you know that buys this type of property. So I get a lot of calls from that. But the biggest thing, Kimberly, is tell everybody that you're an investor. Even if you're not, tell everybody that you're an investor. Because like anything in life, it starts in your brain. Here's a funny story. I passed on the deal because it didn't economically make sense. But last year, my dentist came to me. I'm in his chair. He's like, what do you do? What do you do? He's like, I've seen you around before in a small community. You're a mortgage guy, right? I said, yeah, I am, but I also invest in a lot of property. He's like, my partner is actually retiring. He owns this practice, and I don't want to buy the building. I want to just run the dentist office. I said, I'd love to take a look at it. So literally that night, he sent me all the numbers on the property. I thought that was the coolest thing. I'm sitting in the dentist chair, and the dentist, just because I said something. But if you tell other people that's what you do, other people will find things for you. That's one thing I truly believe. So the honest answer to your question, Kimberly, is everywhere. But when you start telling people that you invest and that you buy real estate, people will bring deals to you. So back to DSCR. And again, we kind of talked about the 1-to-1 ratio, but rates get way better, and your options and your costs get way better at 1 to 2. Most of the time with these, you're going to be putting at least 20% down, rates do get better if you put 25% down. However, we do have options here at Crown if you only have 15% down. You're just going to have a little bit of a higher rate because it's going to be offset there. Now, the one side of DSCR or commercial for that matter is there's typically a prepayment penalty. So you're not allowed to prepay at all for the first 5 years, and that is going to get you the lowest rate. However, different investors will allow you to buy either a 2, 3, or a 4-year no prepayment with a little bit of a higher rate. And depending on what your plan is, sometimes that makes sense. And typically with DSCR, you have to have at least a 680 credit score. So one thing that I tell anybody that wants to get into real estate, like I'm not a huge debt guy, but I use credit cards every month just to keep my credit high. I have about an 800 credit score. And just meticulously manage your credit so that if you ever do need to borrow money, you can go out and borrow money. Oh, Colton's back in here. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So that's that. And then fix and flips. So fix and flips. So how I'll just give you the math on the Ashley Road property, the last one that I did. So I bought that property at 150,000. I needed to put 20% down of the purchase price. 20% of 150, 30 grand. Okay. So that's what I brought to the table, plus my closing costs. So I was about 35,000. Now with a fix and flip, they're going to finance in whatever the rehab budget is. So my rehab budget on that project was 40 grand. We only ended up spending 35. So my loan was down to 120 plus the 40,000, plus I rolled in a little bit of my closing costs. So my loan was for, I think it was 165 or 168 initially. Okay. Now they financed all of that work in, and typically on fix and flips, what happens is that money is there and it's based upon a draw. So all you have to do is go show them that the work is done. So my lender had an app. I'd take a picture of it, put it in all the reimbursements that I was trying to get back, and then they would send me that money and be in my account in 2 days. So I could draw off that 40 grand. I could leverage it. Now I've got a line of credit at Lowe's for 17,000. I literally, this property, I used my line of credit for the down payment. I used my Lowe's charge card for that. I spent no money out of my own pocket with Ashley Road. I had my guy on my team that I'm paying do the work. So I didn't swing a hammer. I didn't do anything on that project. I didn't use a nickel of my own money. And I made over 100 grand on the deal. Pretty sweet deal, right? But yeah, absolutely. HELOCs are a great way. I have HELOCs now on a lot of my property because again, it's just coming up with the seed cash with a lot of these things to do that. So again, and then they'll typically with that, they will finance up to 70% of the ARV, the after repair value. So my appraisal on that came in at like 265. So I certainly could do the purchase price of 150 plus the 40 in reno to do that. And then for the exit strategy, you can BRRRR it, buy, rehab, rent, refinance into your portfolio, or you could sell it. My initial plan with that property was to sell, but I ended up with this particular property BRRRRing it for now, and then I'm going to sell it later, and I'm going to use a 1031 to defer the tax. Okay, cool. So those are the 3 types of financing I've primarily used to grow my portfolio with using little of my own money, but primarily just the equity in my other properties. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about my portfolio. Does anybody have any questions? Any discussion?
I'd like to say thanks for coming out and sharing everything with us, Mr. Adam.
Absolutely.
This was very enlightening to me because when I first came on, I was talking about leverage, and the other guy was talking about formulas. So know your numbers first. But as me taking notes, you need to run your numbers. You need accountants. You need contractors. You need creative funding. Commercial tenants is what you like. One strategic part is you need to find value added properties. You need lawyers. You need to tell people that you're in real estate, especially an investor. You need strategy. You need a plan, manage your credit, and leverage the equity in other properties. I love what you did with the commercial. That was genius. I'd have never thought of that. But you said commercial is different than residential.
Correct.
So it'll give you more leverage, more creative
Mhm.
opportunity. That was genius when you did that. You took the play out, then you took the money out and bought the other property. You didn't have to buy nothing down. So
Yeah. And and the biggest thing too is read. Become a student. Like Robert Kiyosaki is uh, one of my favorite authors as it specifically as it relates to real estate investing. Also, there's another book, and I don't know if I have it here. Um, I don't. It's actually at home, but it's Thomas Wheelwright. It's Robert Kiyosaki's CPA. It's written by a CPA. It's a boring book, but it's called Tax Free Wealth, and it changed my whole perspective on taxes. So highly, highly, highly recommend that. Mike.
Yeah, I just for me, I always
Oh, you're muted, brother.
sorry, I muted myself. We've spent hours and hours brainstorming and talking about investments and stuff, and I love that. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway, Adam, I just wanted to make sure everybody else got this. You got to believe it first, right? Like when you said that, I'm just like, wow, okay, you're right. Because actually, when I got into the mortgage business, it was for the same reason. I wanted to be an investor.
Yeah.
I believed that I could do it first, and then I figured out a path, right? And not at all to pat myself on the back, but just to kind of give some credibility to what you're saying. And I want to take the opportunity real quick just to introduce a buddy of mine. You'll see on the bottom. I'm not sure if Colton's busy or not, so if you're busy, Colton, you don't have to hop on screen. But when you talk about believe in it, Colton Elliott's a guy who's in the process of building the largest skyscraper in Tampa.
So cool.
Like, there's
Awesome.
probably been a
Thank you.
million people that told you you're crazy, right? But you
Oh,
believed
left
it.
and right.
So, dude, I love it. And Colton, I'm glad you're here. But I just thought that was so appropriate for everything that we're talking about. It starts here. If you
It
don't think
does.
you can do it, then none of the other
Well,
stuff
because
matters.
that's what our brain does, right? Our brain uh, finds things and good or bad. Like if we tell ourselves bad things, our brain will find reasons to support bad things too, right? If we tell ourselves amazing things, our brain will find reasons to support that. If we believe that we can do it, which I think we can do anything. I'm a little guy from a little tiny town up in the northern Adirondacks. I graduated high school with 28 kids. I say I graduated 13th in my class. That was pretty bad in 28 kids, right? But a lot of times I don't quantify that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like anybody can do anything if you're willing to dream it and then lace up your boots and do the work. Rika.
My question would be just mistakes that you've made along the way. Like if you could go back and
Don't
talk
like
to your
college.
25-year-old self, what would you tell your
I say all that.
25-year-old self?
Like, but college looks really good on paper, and I'm sure it's there. I've just managed it poorly. It requires a lot of labor. Um, I've personally not done Airbnb. It's something I'd like to do. Um, but mistakes I have made, and I mentioned this briefly, is buying properties emotionally, like buying them because I really like the structure of the building. I like this building gives me the feels like I'd want to live there, right? Like, but if the math doesn't math, don't buy it. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing is it has to be there and really, really look for value add opportunities. So for me, like my main thing that I look for is I look for either under market rents or I look for ways like on the Bridge Street building, there was this like weird little space out back, and it was this I think it was like a 20 by 30 area that was out back, but it had cinder blocks up and in this like covered area. Well, I put a garage door on it and I got $700 a month for it. And I rented it to a contractor. So like find ways to get creative with spaces and generate other revenue. I bought the 10plex and the 7plex that I bought. They had washers and dryers in them, but they weren't coin ops. I went through, I added coin op, and now I make $6,000 or $10,000 a year in just quarters. My
Hey,
wife,
Adam,
her favorite
I'm not
thing
sure
is
if you
cook.
recall, but this is going back
Yeah.
last year, maybe the year before. You and I talked about, you shared a story with me. about somebody that I think you watched a video on YouTube or something about a guy who purchased like a high-rise
Helicopter
apartment
pad, right?
complex, put a helicopter
Yeah.
pad on it,
So,
and then so
so the guy's
that
name's
story, if you could.
Dolph Deroux, Dolfderoos. He's a guy from New Zealand. I've been to a bunch of his classes. He's a great little guy. He's little. He's like 5'0". But he's on. He does a lot on YouTube. And he is a wealth of knowledge. He's written a lot of books in like the '90s and stuff on how to do real estate. He's a little older now, but still the same principles. He bought this building. I forget where the building was. I think it was uh, somewhere in the Philippines, I want to say is where it was. And it's in like one of the heaviest trafficked communities in the world. And so to go 20 miles takes you like 2.5 hours. Um, so he bought this skyrise building and he literally painted a helipad on the roof. So a couple gallons of paint, painted this helipad, went through, renegotiated all the leases because now they have access to a helipad so they can get to the airport faster to get out of town, and turned, a few $100s or $1,000 in paint and some permits and stuff with the FAA or whatever it is in the Philippines. And he leveraged it to $1 billion. And it's wild. And that's what I love about real estate is you can get super, super creative. Here's another story. And maybe the same guy, this Dolph guy. He bought a property. I think this one was in Philly, I want to say. And it was a property near the highway, down by the river. And so just probably north of town, if you guys know that area. And there's like this building there, and it was a really, really thin building. And it was hard to leverage and it was hard to do anything. And they couldn't find tenants for it because it just the way the property was set. And so what he did, bought the building, still couldn't find a tenant, but he turned the whole side of the building into billboards, generated revenue from that. So, anyways, but that's the thing about real estate and especially commercial is all you need to do is figure out ways to change your NOI and the net operating income. And the two ways to do that are increase your income or lower your expenses. And you can use those strategies for different things as a multiplier to grow your business. But I apologize, guys. I do have to jump. Any last questions?
How you doing? We want to say thanks. How do we contact you, Mr. Adam?
I'll tell you what, you guys, small group here. If you guys want to take out your pen, I'll give you my personal cell phone.
Okay.
Okay. My cell phone number is 518-578-3160. 518-578-3160. If anybody has any questions, if anybody, wants to just talk real estate, like it's my passion. I love real estate and I would love to help you guys, with your either next acquisition or better ways that you could help your customers. Cool.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Adam.
you guys all. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody.